Hi, I'm Caroline James, and this is Voices from Venice, a global dialogue of women in architecture. Last March, I spearheaded with Ariel Aslin-Lichten the campaign for recognition of Denise Scott Brown for her role in the Pritzker Prize. My awareness was risen about issues of recognition, collaboration, and inclusion in the field of architecture. At this time, we're in Venice during the Biennale, that it was a confluence of many different perspectives from architects working from global perspectives, and they were all coming to Venice. So I really wanted to hear from people about how they work and how do these issues relate to them. So welcome to Venice, and we're delighted to be involved in these discussions. Caroline Bos, thank you so much for joining us today for Voices of Venice, a global dialogue with women in architecture.
Thank you. Thank you also for what you did with the petition and bringing, I think it is a very nice way, was a nice way, and it was very successful, obviously, so that's good. We can all celebrate that. And also a very positive step. I think that is very much a way forward, to say it like that, to address the issue of inclusion in a positive way.
Where are you on the range of practice?
Difficult, I suppose, to judge from the inside out, and also I think a practice is so dynamic and so much moving forward, and I think our practice UN studio also finds that maybe that's at the core of our practice. So therefore it's difficult to place yourself. Not only are we moving and changing all the time, but the world around us too. So I maybe find it difficult to say, oh, we are positioned here, others are positioned there. I don't see it like that. I see it as everything and everyone is actually constantly changing. And maybe that, to me, is also what makes it interesting to practice, even when conditions aren't easy, but it's also necessary, I think, to survive, to have a certain kind of flexibility.
Oh, I was wondering, how do you produce designs?
It's a combination of having a sort of very personal, deep felt idea of what you really believe in. That is a long-term vision, maybe that you have, or that is maybe it is simply your own personality that determines a lot. But then the other side is how that interacts with others, and that is a very important part as well. So collaboration in all sorts of ways, not simply being able to find people who want your work is one thing, people who want to work with you in your studio is another, but also the far wider environment around that of people who you can really share your ideas with and involve their own creativity.
And who has been, who are some of the figures that have been important in that feeding of that creativity that you have generated?
It's very difficult to name names, because I think more and more, as the project maybe expands, it becomes really so collaborative, a collective effort of many people. They are, in maybe 10 years ago, we would really be able to name the first circle in your network, engineers, and still very much people you traditionally associate with architecture. But I think that expands more widely now, and there's really a new interest in participation. Societal participation is emerging also a lot. out, and that has a big influence, I think, on how we are going to practice.
Then how do you then, as architect, create a platform for that participation?
I think that there are also people who are specialized in creating platforms and who mediate between maybe academic collectives from society, bottom up as it were, and practitioners. So the platforms where they can meet. We can also do, I think, ourselves our best to create a platform. We do that with US Studio, trying to, we're working on a sort of virtual community and also real, meeting for real in a sort of knowledge sharing way, where we really try as much as possible to share everything we develop in our work, not just the end result, but also the knowledge we derive in the process, share that with the wider world.
Yes, no, I mean that seems to be really a key also in your work is that marking of the process.
Yes.
How do you think through between form and space, so form and experience?
Yeah, experience, I think, is good that you mentioned that.
Yeah.
To some extent, we start probably from a kind of imagining of what the experience will be of the person occupying the space that we then make manifest around that imagined experience in a sense. Yeah. So I think that is probably a starting point. But also as you continue your practice over a long period of time, in our case 25 years now, you also you build on your own ideas. You find which ideas. Sometimes it can take more than 10 years before something you imagine is finally realized through a series of projects that you try, lose the competition again, lose the next one, and so on. And so you also develop your own line of thinking over time. So you don't have, it's no longer now the case that a new project comes in, we sit completely blank at the table. What are we going to do? You have already a fundament. Yeah.
Beautiful.
And then, Then now what we're now working on is how do we make that collective even within our studio, because these experiences are locked within certain people who've been there all that time, and that is a little bit of a waste if we keep that. So that's maybe also a form of being inclusive, which goes far beyond gender or any type of minority or so on. It's simply person to person sharing.
What organization in your practice has been important? What structures in your practice has been important in order to ensure inclusion and continuation of these fundaments and ideas?
Maybe not structure, just communication.
Okay.
Is maybe the only thing necessary, just to observe, acknowledge, and then do something with it. We have structures in our office that had to organize our practice, organize also for the people within US Studio to. We like people to stay with us for a long time, and they do. So we have structures to help them have a career, really, within US Studio. And then we also have, we're learning to communicate also with the client, also about things that are important, and how is it going? What are you thinking? And
Okay.
in the end, also that relationship. Also, of course, it's formal and it's a business transaction to some extent, but it's also maybe first and foremost also a personal relationship. Yeah.
How do you see this practice, the practice of architecture, your own practice, evolving?
Our practice is based in Amsterdam. It was always quite internationally oriented. From the beginning, we had many nationalities working with us. But now we have an office in Shanghai, which is almost half of the office we have in Amsterdam.
Wow.
And we work in many different cultures now. So.
Well, if you could talk about that, like, are the issues that you're speaking about, the dynamism and the relationships, are they similar globally when you're practicing versus when you're practicing in Amsterdam, which I guess has always been a global hub?
Yes, yeah,
since
always.
the golden age,
yes.
the golden age,
yes.
you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But
luckily,
you know. But I'm wondering, is it different when you're practicing abroad? There's a lot.
And what we really first thing we had to learn starting to work in Asia was speed. And they have to work far faster.
Oh.
And I think
why is that?
Well, things go that I think their innate tempo maybe is higher. The whole working, the process of building, designing is very quick. Maybe the urgency of a world that is still urbanizing so fast there's a real urgency there. But also another way of tackling things. Our first project was conversion of a department store in Korea, in the first project in Southeast Asia, and what we found out is that how they could do it so quickly is that they would have a crew working on each floor independently, whereas in the Western world we go from one place, finish it, and go on to the next. You would be all over the place, all at the same time. So it's another it's another form of management which is very effective. It works there. We have to adapt to that, and it's not so easy. So we have to also, in a way, adapt our process of design. How we think about design also has to change because of that.
It's really because this is these different perspectives that we're gathering from women practitioners, and as you said, it's not, these issues are not just solely gender related or minority related. But I was wondering if there is anything else you would like to share about these different issues that we've talked about.
Yeah, I think it's nice that this issue of inclusion is coming up again. It was difficult to address, I think, for a long time, because it was associated with complaining, whining, or being negative, or accusing also, accusing others, and who felt then, that's not right. What am I doing wrong? So it didn't really work how it was dealt with. At the same time, there hasn't been enough progress. Well, what I was thinking, Caroline, why I was so happy with what you did is that it brought this whole issue into a fresh, a very positive light. And I think as women, we have been struggling and are still struggling with our role in the professional world. We're a little bit, I think, in an impasse where how to move next, and yet there is still a long way to go. We don't have the equality we all want. So together we are going to have to do more, to work more towards creating that society that we all want.
Yes. What are some things, what are some actions or positions that you think would be important to increasing the equality, besides these discussions, of course?
I think we maybe all have to take individually, look at it seriously individually and really work from our own position, each one of us, to achieve it, and not rely too much on very slow-moving institutions to do that for us. People to point it out, to point out that's not, why not? Yeah. I think so.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
In Venice.
Yes. What wonderful. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm so happy that you could join us, Louise Braverman, for a discussion, Voices from Venice, a global dialogue with women in architecture.
I think when I look back, I entered the field with a certain degree of skepticism and a lack of familiarity. Because I came from the art world, I was in art, and when I went to graduate school, I really didn't know what architects did, but I guess I knew that I wanted my work to be more part of the community, maybe more inclusive in general, and participate with other communities and other people. I realized early on it would be important to learn about the craft and the making of architecture, because I come with this strong aesthetic vision in my head, which I brought from my thinking about art, very conceptually oriented. But I realized that to be taken seriously in the profession, that I needed to know how to build things and make things, and so I spent a lot of time actually learning in whatever capacity I could about the making of buildings.
So I would love if you talked a little more about the translation from your conceptual, your background in aesthetics and art. How did that translate into architecture?
I have all these ideas sort of floating around in my head, and they have sort of a consistency. I'm interested in buildings and places that are situated both in their time and in their place. And then being situated in time means thinking of what is also new, of the new time versus what came previously. I understand that we're building for people. So what we design and make must be experiential. People must feel the space and understand the space. It must be part of their community, but it must be of the new, because it must be, if we're building in 2014, it must be of 2014. And that entails bringing in the fact that communication, the world has gotten a lot smaller. And it's kind of easier now to work globally, and we've been working globally in Portugal and Africa. And what I realize is that first it's really important to have a face-to-face human conversation with whomever. Whether it's in New York or it's in boutiques, to understand who the people are, and then to see the site and to physically see the site and understand kind of the parameters of the site, and so that is both a mix of the people and the context, some way of putting ideas that are relevant to our time in the context of the particulars of the place.
That's beautiful. And I was wondering then, like in your team, in your office, and you lead your firm. So I was wondering what organizational structures have been important in order to carry out this situated sensibility.
Well, I think in our firm, it's small and everybody's voice is heard. I mean, it's kind of, I generally come up with sort of an initial direction. And to be honest, we start with an idea, we speak constantly. It's all teams.
Yeah.
That's the best relationships with our clients.
Yeah.
Are when we're teammates. We're in this thing together.
I like that.
We're in it together from the get-go. In my office, people come and work with us in the office. We're in this together. We're here to do the best we possibly can.
That's such a beautiful outlook, a positive outlook.
Well, why be negative when you have an opportunity to be positive? And with our very much similarly with our consultants, because we work somewhat repetitively with engineers and lighting consultants and even when we work abroad, when we work with consultants from other countries, we try to inspire the attitude that we're all in this together, doing something important.
Interesting. Because I mean, also, you know, you're talking about working in Africa and working in Portugal. So you really are global, and you know, but also very different economies too. So
Definitely.
I was wondering, you know, are the issues similar when you're practicing globally?
Well, the attitude is similar because we are kind of in my head. I've always felt like, yes, we have a protocol, and we're going to build substantial buildings, and they're not going to fall apart, and they're going to work on many levels for many different types of people. But we're kind of nimble.
Yeah.
And we are entrepreneurial, and we're looking for crevices between
I love
ways
that word.
of doing things, between the cracks of that maybe is a little more relevant to our time or relevant to a particular situation. So we're not locked in to sort of a bureaucratic sensibility, although we work with people with various expertise, so they bring that to the engagement, you know, and at the end we want something that is an architectural whole, that has an aesthetic beauty, has a humanistic value, and it can't be a hodgepodge of ideas, so it becomes an editing process once the initial ideas are in place, and adding, subtracting, making better, and it's never done till it's done. I think it's till it's standing in the rain. You know, then it's done.
Well, I was wondering if you could share one experience, like of a recent project that you've built where that was most tangible, that it evolved through the process because of you having to respond to.
Yes, well, I can. For example, this project we worked on in Portugal. Once we realized the masonry capacity of the Portuguese workforce and the beauty of the concrete work that was just in their bones, there was no way this was going to be a steel and glass building. It was going to be a concrete building, and it was going to be a white concrete building. And so we really worked with our local architectural team to get those details really right. And it evolved over time. And it was quite a collaboration. But I must say that I think a lot, and as early years when I said it was important to learn about the craft of architecture, the making, I really sense that I have a basic, and my team has a real understanding of construction. So when we're working in unusual circumstances, whether it's on Skype or whether we're in person, we kind of, architecture is a global language. Making of the details is very similar, which is surprising in different locations. So we can edit out what's really important if you understand, and what's kind of less important. And that works in the aesthetic realm. Like we want the the overall feeling of a conceptual idea, and not to ever lose that. And we want the execution to be at that same level, and sort of knowing what's important and what's maybe a little less important, where you can give and where you...
Going back a little bit to your discussion, which you touched upon, about your interest in the situation and the people and the way that they interact with site and place. But could you talk a little bit about the relationship between form and experience, that translation?
Well, the translation is, I mean, some people call it magical. I think you come sort of with an ability, if you're in architecture, to kind of pre-visualize things in your head, and some of them are real, some of them are great fantasies. But I walk around looking at what I'm seeing just in my ordinary day experience, and then I'm thinking, well, what could it be?
Yeah.
And it's just something that somebody who is artistically inclined does. It's just a way, and I think when I was younger I thought it was quite odd that I did this, but in fact I do this all the time.
So you look at something and think.
And you just sort of think, oh, this is this or this is that. So then the most important thing at the beginning of the job is to talk to people, but not really talk to people, engage in conversation and listen to people. And listen to what their needs are, listen to what they kind of are interested in an intellectual and programmatic way, but also to listen to what's in their hearts and what they really, what would make them feel that this is something beautiful and special for them. And we worked in Africa in a very poor situation, and these people were looking, it was clear from the get-go, they wanted a dignified situation. Just because we're poor, why can't we have something that's beautiful, and special? And they said that, maybe not directly, but that was the message. And it was clear that they didn't, they wanted something beyond. And I was hoping that we had the ability to provide that. So the listening is very important. And so listen, and then, as I mentioned before, there's some kind of a connection to that sort of floating thinking, aesthetics, that matches with sort of the pragmatic down in the sort of daily buildability. Rem Koolhaas has talked about modernism over 100 years. Modernism is, in fact, a plurality. Modernism moves as the clock moves. We're in the digital world now, so what is modern or contemporary today must deal with the connectivity of today.
I was wondering, how would you respond to prompt, what is the element of gender in architecture? Right.
Well, speaking of our time, I think we're as women in the field, we're in a wonderful situation. Why? Because we have people like yourself, Caroline. Well, it's true. And people of your generation who feel that it is our time. It is our time. If I go back to the beginning of my career, I had no conception why men, women, why anybody couldn't do this. You just need certain aesthetic and maybe people skills put together to make something. And your people like yourself and your generation has the communication and the connectivity to the internet to bring it all out there. Because the reality is, I don't really think there's a feminine architecture or masculine architecture. I think it's a humanistic architecture. And I think women are good. We learn maybe historically and in our lives to multitask, which is a very good
multitasking. Nimble, talking about being nimble.
We're there. We work things out and troubleshoot. And that is a way of making buildings happen. And women, like men, but women are perfectly able to do this. And for whatever reason it was not familiar in the past, I have a very good feeling that will be something that people will go, oh, women weren't in this field. What do you mean?
And how much, I'm just imagining, speaking about the dreaming, the floating, but I'm just imagining also how much more diverse perspectives would bring to the field, no?
Oh, it'd be magnificent.
Yeah, because people like yourself, outliers, right?
I'm an outlier. I'm kind of out there. I felt like from the beginning, maybe the skepticism and the art background, I just stayed with it, and persistence. I'm here, and I was working along, and I enjoyed the work. And I think that comes. I enjoyed it all along. I never felt oppressed by it. But I felt that it is true. There was this sort of women were not in favor in a way that they should be or could be.
Yeah.
And I think communication like we're having now could easily change that, because there really isn't a rational reason that I can think of, a logical reason. Well, sometimes I have people come to me and say, are you a housing architect, or are you a school architect, or are you a museum architect? And I say to them and to myself, well, we're all of those. And we're none of those. Because we're thinking about how to make spaces and places that have something that go beyond that for everybody. So inherently in that discussion is the discussion of inclusion.
Yeah.
If we don't include everybody in the making of architecture, there will be a disconnect. They bring new ideas and the possibility of going forward. Yeah. And we're global now, so guys, wake up, we're all here. And it's great. It's great, and I feel very positive that things will take a turn. It's a moment that I feel just intuitively where things are going to go in the right direction for women in the field, which is great.
Thank you so much for coming today and discussing this.
Oh, Caroline, this is an absolute pleasure. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Odile Decq, so much for coming to Voices from Venice, Global Dialogue with Women in Architecture.
My practice is quite small, because I don't want to be a big office. I don't want to have a huge office. This is not what I want. And I would like to. I just want to care about my project and to know everything which is coming out from my office, and to be able to be proud of everything. So for that, I have to work a lot. I have to be very present in the office. Even if I travel, I'm always connected and I'm always in contact with the people in my office. And I control everything. So it's a bit a nightmare for the people, but not so much. But and I want to know who are the people in my office. It's why I want to stay like that. And at the same time, I say that, but at the same time I know that because I'm a woman, because this is your purpose. I know that I know all the men who started at the same time than me, from my generation. And they are much more in front of me, because they all had more projects, they were more involved, they were more pushing themselves, they were more powerful. I was just doing my work and doing my job and doing that the best as I could. So, and I think that this is the way women are doing. And at the same time, when you do that, you don't realize that you are a little bit staying down, staying on the back. At what point you have to think about, okay, it's not because I'm a woman that I have to stay on the back. I have to be in front. And I need to be in front because I need to propose what I believe in, and it has been to be recognized because I can help people. This is why I pay people who will live in my buildings, people who will live in the cities, but also the other women who want to become architects. So this is really important to prove them that it's possible. We don't trust so much about ourselves because we do our job. And we think that, okay, it will be recognized once, it doesn't matter. We know that we are doing good job. And we know that we are doing much better because we are doing twice, three times
working
to get the same level. So we know that we are doing that. But at the same time, at what point we say, okay, but it's unfair. And this is why now more and more I start to speak about women in architecture. And not only in architecture, but in the world. Because this is really important. Because now, when I was growing, when I was a teenager, I was really believing that we will be equal. We will become...
a faith that your work would also reflect.
And
outside.
And at the end, I discover now that women are... the power of women is decreasing. Even if there is position, but at the same time, it's not so good for them in the world now.
So was there a certain change of... You had this mindset, value of your work and working hard and gaining skills, but was there also what is the action, what was a certain series of actions you took in order to gain the recognition that you deserve?
Energy. I think it's mostly energy and what? No, I don't try to search for recognition. I just try to prove that my work is good. And I know that now because, what can I say? Before I was working in partnership with a man because he was my partner in life and work.
Yeah.
And he died. Okay, 15 years ago, more than 15 years ago. And as soon as I became alone, people were asking me, "Oh, Odile, are you sure that you can do it?" Architects.
Yeah.
And men. And okay, maybe you can work in another office and you can work with a man. I said, excuse me, I was the one who was doing everything, so I know that I can do it.
Yeah.
So, but it was very rebuilding this possibility. It took time, and at the same time, I discovered that by doing that, I became free, because I don't care about what do they think. I don't care about what do they. I can talk. I can say what I want. Yeah. I can say what I believe in. What I want to say.
Yeah.
And I do my job. If they don't want, okay, I don't care. If they want, okay, I will be happy. They will be happy. That's it.
So I was wondering, how do you produce designs? Is there only one way? Like
no,
in your hermetic, or in teams, or are there various
my
ways?
office is much more organized as a workshop. That means that we work in. I start working with a group of one or two. It depends. We built a little team for starting the discussion about the project. And I come and I tell stories and I start to explain how I want that the people will live in, how the people will act inside, and what is the question of art if it's a museum, what is the question of education if it's a school, or what is the question of... And I try to educate them because... young people, they are not so well, they don't know so many things.
We think it's more important to stand at the computer than to go to a play or go to the opera. What kind of stories do you tell?
I tell them the future story of the place we are thinking about. Because I always think that in a place we have to be able to make people enjoying the space, enjoying the place, and being able to have a place where they escape a little bit about their normal life, about their anxiousness or whatever.
Yeah.
So a place where they are able to live comfortably and to be, because I think it's for whom we are working, not for myself, for human people. Because this is for human, we have to care about them. We have to think what do they want, can they enjoy, etc. But it's true that what I propose is what I can enjoy myself because I don't know what. Okay.
Yeah.
But I know what is what is making me enjoying me.
Yeah.
So I say, okay, I can make that, and if they enjoy, okay, I will be happy, and they will be happy. And some can not like, doesn't matter, because we can't please to everybody,
How do you translate experience into form, or what is the relationship between the form?
The form comes at the end, because before it's a story. After that, it start to be an organization of the program and the brief and the plan and the spaces, and the space and the form is coming. Sometimes it's a form that I have an idea, but I don't say too much, and we come and we adapt. So it's much more an intuitive way of doing. Not a very rigorous, not a very strictly organized, not predefined, never. It's just always a story, a travel. But I discovered very recently, this last week, that the young in my office now are very much more frightened by the construction site.
Let's talk about that. I'm interested.
Because it's difficult. Because it's difficult. You have to talk to contractors. Sometimes they just say no, so you have to say this is what we need to have, and you have to be firm, to be very strictly organized. To think, okay, even if I'm young, in front of men, because it's only men. You have to, if it's a young woman, it's more difficult, but sometimes young men too. You have to prove that what you want is that, or what we want as the office is that. And sometimes they say, oh no, it's too complicated, I don't want to have stress, I don't want to be under pressure, etc. I said, but life is pressure, life is stress. This is the way to live. Otherwise, what you are doing, you are lying there and you're dead.
Right.
What's that?
Yeah.
So to live is to have stress and to overpass your stress because you beat yourself to be stronger when you do that.
And what about when you're practicing globally? When you're practicing abroad. Does anything change in the way that you work?
Yes. We are much more free when we practice abroad.
Why?
Yes, because when you practice abroad, when you're outside your country, the people that you meet are asking you to do the best that you can do. Because they are proud about having you and being proud about what you propose. When you're in your own country, because you know many people and people know you very well, they said, "Oh, you are doing too much. Can you restrain a little bit? Can you do that?" This is not the same. So outside you are free. Inside you are under the pressure of the constraints.
You know, so we're in the exhibition with that Rem. That Rem has curated is about fundamentals and the elements of architecture.
You know that I'm never politically correct.
Oh,
I
good.
always say what I want.
Oh, good.
What I think. So for me, it's problematic. For two things. First, because I don't believe that only modernism is the history of the 20th century. Because modernism was starting before the end of at the end of the 19th and came until the 60s, 70s, and after that we started another story. So this is not all the 20th century. And I came to the Giardini yesterday morning and I visited different pavilions. I discovered that they were really respectful, saying at the entrance of their pavilion, we are respectful for the thematic of Colas, etc. And I said, okay, I have to look at, and I saw that they are just telling the story of the 60s and the 70s. But they were just saying that this story is only the modernist time. Or if you remember very well, the 60s and the 70s were the avant-garde time.
Rebellions
and avant-garde.
In France, goodness.
Yes, and the avant-garde was thinking about the future, trying to make perspective, thinking about tomorrow, doing everything, dreaming about the life. And what I see in the pavilion, this is just the official story of the time. And for me, it's really conservative, and it's much more than that. It's reactionary, and I'm very frightened by that.
Okay.
Because I think that if you show that to the young people, and the students are the more numbers of visitors in the Biennale, in what they will believe. We're looking at that. What is the hope? Because today the young generation has no hope for the future. They are very difficult to make them to be able to dream, to think that they have to build the future and they have to build the world for tomorrow. But with that, they say, okay, what can I do? And what is the hope? Where is the thing? Where is the world going? And there is no explanation. And even with the modernity, the modernity was proposing something, but to make people living a better life. But it's not said in any way. And when you go to this exhibition, I don't understand anything. Because why? First, it's the first time that an architect, director of the Biennale, is working alone in the Arsenal. He's doing his own exhibition without inviting any architect, any other proposal, not doing any proposal, and just telling the story, explaining the story with his own view on the story.
One last thing. I mean, you've touched upon gender. What do you think is the element of gender in relation to architecture, or is there anything else?
It's a very difficult question. Because I always have refused to say something about that, to say something about that. Because I think there is no question of gender in the architecture. There is different personalities. And everybody is different. In between men, in between women, and between men and women. So even if women sometimes are focusing on life inside the building, but some men can do that. And even if men are much more focusing on their ego on the architecture, but some women can do that. So, no.
I like that. And finally, I'd love to hear a little bit about why you decided to start your own school, and what is the scope of that, and is that about the dreaming?
Yes, exactly. This is a resume of what I've said before. It's because I strongly discovered by traveling all over the world in many schools all over the world, and especially in France, but everywhere, that today studies of architecture are trapped in the academical system and trapped in a very strictly organized system without making the students escaping. So, and it's and trapped in architecture, because and in educating students to become architects professionals. And I strongly believe that architecture is not a profession; it's a discipline. Architects is a profession. Architecture is a discipline. It's a discipline to understand the world. It's a discipline to propose, to make diagnosis. It's a discipline to make proposal.
To make diagnosis?
Diagnosis. And to propose something. But you can apply that in many different fields. And you can have to be nourished to nourish architecture by other disciplines. So because this is the way the world is working. And at the same time, if you look at the work of an architect today, it is so different than the work of an architect 20 years ago.
How so? Why?
Because it's different, because we play with different tools, the life is very different, and it will become more and more different. We are exactly at the turn point, as we were at the end of the beginning of the 20th, when we started to travel. Now we are starting to play with digital tools, etc. And it's not only the digital of the representation of the images, it's the digital of the life. So we have to think the space differently, we have to think the organization of the city differently because of that. And at the same time, we have to care that to help people to meet eyes to eyes and to shake hands with the blood, with the skin. Yeah. Because it's not just digital connection, we have to have physical connection. Yeah. It's much better. So this is all that. The School of Architecture for me.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. Welcome, Yasmin Shariff, and thank you so much for participating in this project, Voices from Venice, a global dialogue with women in architecture.
I think what you're doing is absolutely critical and long overdue. And I think one of the things that Denise Scott Brown's initiative and Petition has brought out is that women who practice in their husbands' names, and I'm one, are in danger of not being recognised for obvious reasons. So not only have you got a macho culture that you've got to deal with, the fact that your name isn't on the practice, which when you're young and just starting out, you probably don't think it's a big issue. Suddenly, when you're mature and you're doing work that is important in your own name, that suddenly you don't have a name. So, in fact, at this very moment, I'm struggling to find out what I'm going to rename my practice as. Because I can't be fighting the corner for women under my husband's name in the practice.
Do you, and how did you produce design?
Of course, it's a team, and where one ends and one begins is very, very difficult to say. Obviously, each one of us had a specialism and a strength, but
how would you articulate that?
It's very easy in my case because Dennis was a scholar, and so. And his activities in publishing and scholarship, especially with modern movement and all the organisations that he belonged to, were very much his territory. And so I focused on other territory a lot. But the two, crossed. Everywhere we went, we help to feed each other. It isn't a single occupation. We all stand on shoulders of so many people. It's a process, so you come up with an idea, there's a whole battle and a change, and then at the end you come up with something that you both know, yes, that's it, it works, it fits, and it is a process. And if anyone who thinks you just begin a design and it's end and there's no conflict in between, it can't be a good design. You need that grit to get the oyster.
And also some theme that's come up has been risk.
Oh, of course.
It's an issue of risk.
Yes, because if you're breaking, it's dead easy to be mediocre. You can just do mediocre buildings, it'll be really easy, no one cares, it just happens, it's fine. But if you want to do architecture with a big A, you're always looking at things innovatively and differently and trying to do things better. And if you want to carry on refining the steam engine, that's fine, but if you want to do something different, then you've got to take risks.
Yeah. So I'm interested to unpack a little bit about how you describe the range of in your architecture practice.
Well, the practice is very heavily research-based. Mm-hmm. So, in fact, we dealt with a lot of deal with a lot of projects that other architects couldn't progress because they were difficult or took too much time or uneconomic for them. If you have a very good knowledge base and a good library, then you've got access to information very quickly that enables you to do things in a very detailed and solid way. So you are the expert on that building or that building technique, and you can stand up to people who say you should be doing it differently.
And I would love if you could articulate also a type of project that you felt really encapsulated that hardness and solidness, and also having to advocate for something that was unknown.
Okay, well, in a way, when you say hardness and solidness, the building that comes to mind is the opposite. It's the most floppy and airy building I've ever built. And in fact, we've had more publicity on this building than any other, and it's a straw bale dance studio. And we called it Straw Dance, and nobody had done a load-bearing straw bale studio in Britain at that time. So this was in the late 90s. And so it was difficult because I had to get a structural engineer to certify it. And but it was great fun because I organised workshops and people came and helped to build it. We built it in 2 weekends. It was just brilliant.
What organizational structures have you considered important in getting the work done and being effective?
I think making sure that you delegate to people who are able to do the work and interested to do the work, and the practice all eat together. So we have a big lunch table and we all eat together, and so that makes a big difference because immediately, because we're small enough to do that. So if there are any issues, any difficult things, they come up straight away and you can nip them in the bud, and that's really, really, really important.
Yeah.
And obviously, you've got a time scale, you've got to be clear about what you're trying to do and how you're trying to do it. And within that very rigid structure, there's actually a great deal of flexibility. And encouraging everyone to be really passionate about what they're doing.
I'm sure that it carries through to the client too. They can see that.
Well, no, the last project I've just finished, the client was so enthusiastic about it. It just finished it in January, and she's taking tours around.
Hey.
It's a very special client. She bought a house by Mary Crowley. Now, Mary Crowley is the most important woman architect who was, she won in Britain, she won the AA Diploma Prize, the first woman to do so.
Wow.
She spearheaded school design in Britain. Now, most people haven't heard of her, but in 2 years' time, I'm doing an exhibition at the AA.
I was hoping you'd bring it up, or else I would.
Celebrating 100 years of women at the AA, and Mary Crowley was one of our most eminent graduates, and she was brilliant.
So I was wondering what you thought about what's the relationship between the experience and the form.
Often the focus is on the spaces and looking inwards, but I really think we need to look out and enjoy the out. that there's that whole extra room which can be infinitely expansive, and making that connection I really think is so important.
At Venice, for the Biennale, this year's theme being elements of architecture on the one hand and then absorbing modernity. I was wondering, what do you think about this, looking at architecture through those lenses?
Well, the pavilion I really loved was the Brazilian pavilion.
Brazilian, okay.
And the reason I really loved it was the nature and architecture were flowed in such a sensuous and evocative way. Of course, Niemeyer's got a lot to do with that.
Lina Bombardi?
And Lina Bombardi, of course. And and Kenya actually is very similar in terms of its climate, and there's been a lot of influence in Kenya from Brazil. And in vegetation, the environmental design, the use of sort of screens, and a lot of similarities. And to me, the modern movement is all about sunlight and air, and the thing that didn't get put into the equation is the energy. And I see architecture as a natural progression from the modern movement. I don't see why we should apologise for it. I find some of the exhibits are apologetic about modernism, and that makes me angry, because I think that if it's the obvious and natural thing to do, and everything that you do that isn't in that vein is just putting sort of icing on the cake, or putting motifs and things on there, which, yes, they can be clever, yes, the semantics can be whatever, but that isn't my kind of, that's not the kind of architecture that I admire. I admire what's in the Brazilian pavilion, strong modernism, where spaces of daylighting and space and form unfold in a beautiful way. And there are lots of examples here as well. There's Rafik Azam, whose work in Bengal is also really quite amazing, because he's working in a very difficult situation. There's Louise Braverman's museum in Portugal, which nestles into the hillside and is still beautifully daylit. And there are some really amazing examples all around where you don't have to apologise for modernism, and I don't think architects should.
And I like that the way you articulate that it's a continuation, it's not like a break. That in a way it's like you're looking to modernism for the principles that you draw from. And working with those.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people see modernism as just straight lines. Well, Niemeyer isn't. And there's the whole organic tradition of modernism.
Tropical architecture, and I don't know if, of course, from the AA, is that also a narrative?
Well, the AA, the
AA,
the AA had a tropical school that was run by Otto Königsberger.
What would be the element of gender in architecture?
It seems to me that women are far more finely tuned to nature. If you look at the exhibits, you'll see that the relationship with the outside is far more delicate and far more immediate. At least that's how I see it. And I also think that there is more attention to detail in the sense of how people use spaces. And I think that, if Rome had a counterpart, that we would have had a much richer experience in the Biennale, because I think the technical aspects, when you go in the main pavilion, are absolutely amazing. You get the history of all the elements.
Slice into the window.
But what you don't get is the social history.
I was wondering if there was any more that you would like to talk about women in architecture and recognition and inclusion.
If Denise Scott Brown hadn't made the comments that she had made, people would not have even realised. So I don't think there's a deliberate force out there to keep women out. It's just that this is how culture and civilizations have evolved, and we are where we are, and now it is no longer acceptable. But if women are going to hide behind their husbands, and I will say I'm guilty of that as much as that. But once you realise, then you have to change. Otherwise, you can't say, well, women are being ignored. You have to stand up for yourself. So I'm hoping that what you're doing will actually help facilitate women to get together in a much more productive way. And I think it's only by getting together. I don't think any one woman can do it. I think we have to work together, and really important to work with men as well. And if we're looking for a fair and just society, well, then we have to have a fair and just profession. We can't. How can a misogynist profession produce an environment, an infrastructure for a fair and just society? It just can't happen. So I would encourage women to come together and to stand up and demand their rights, because they're as good as anybody else.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful to have this discussion with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Benedetta Tagliabue, thank you so much for joining us today for a discussion, Voices from Venice, a global dialogue with women in architecture.
I started to be an architect next to a very powerful man architect who was also my husband. So we had a kind of a love relationship, family relationship, and then the work relationship. And everything was mixed. And I was thinking that sometimes I was suffering. It was not a very easy situation, because you are in a role, and especially when you are next to a man who is so powerful, you have these difficulties in finding your own identity. And sometimes also I was thinking, it's kind of strange, I'm the wife, and maybe people think that I'm here only because I'm the wife. And then one day I got more relaxed. For example, we were working on the market Santa Caterina, and I was going to the market many times. Everybody in the market is a family. So there's a man, the woman, and then the sons and daughters. When they grow up, they start to work in the family business. So I was just admitting, this is a family business. Architects, especially in Spain, they were small, and you need all the energy of the complete family to make this artisanal work go on. And then this was more accepting.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful. So it sounds like it was a real switch.
It was important. It was important to give a kind of understanding of what my figure was and how it could be, and also examples, very easy examples of people in the street, and everybody was accepting those situations. So I thought, we are artisans, and then we can be a family. That's it.
That's beautiful. And so I was wondering, how did you approach design?
I started to collaborate with Rick with a sense of trying to understand what he needed, and I was responding to it. And then now, I had a tragedy happening in my life. Rick died in year 2000, and we were in the middle of a lot of projects, a lot of activities, and maybe these doubts, what is my role? And suddenly when he died, I had no doubts at all. I knew perfectly well that I knew everything. And he was really important, and I really wanted all the projects that we had in our hands at the moment to go on. and I knew that I could bring them on. So
powerful.
Yes, I discovered my power. No? Because when you're together with the other person, you give it for granted that you know everything of the other person, that you have this kind of collaboration and interior dialogue.
Yeah.
Then when the other person disappears, you discover that this is also belonging to you. No? So, and it's still a kind of dialogue. So I had this double experience of being next to a very powerful man, and then being alone as a woman, owner of a firm, and bringing it further.
There's a range of architectural practice in the process, isn't there?
Yeah.
I was wondering if you could speak about where you are and where your collaboration was on the range.
Well, in a way, being the owners of the little firm, of the artisanal firm that we were saying, you have to take decisions, the first decisions, and design decisions, of course, but first of all, also how to behave with clients, which people you would like to include to have projects, how to organize your time, if you want to teach and work or only work, how many lectures you want to give. All of these decisions are important in order to give the way of functioning of the place.
So artisanal, will you elaborate on that?
Yes, I think it was very clear. You know, Barcelona is a place of small firms and small situations. And I think I discovered that we were drawing, for example, at the beginning with no computers, and we were drawing by hands. And it was very similar to the work that the mother of Rick or his auntie, they were doing, because they had a place where they were preparing, how do you say, clothes.
Like they were tailors?
They were tailors, high-class tailors. So in a way, we were very similar, but we were high-class architects. We were tailoring buildings for who wanted the building from us. And we had very similar instruments, you know, drawing, being precise, doing beautiful things, because you know that you want to do beautiful things and have beautiful products. And so this way of working was so similar and gave us the consciousness that we were artisans.
What is the relationship between form? Like, what, you know, ultimately there's a product that you're making, but form and experience?
I don't know. I think when we make a project, we always have this necessity of experiencing the situation. When you have to make a project in Venice, you need to understand it, and to know it a little bit, and to be inside, and then to meet your client, and then to meet the people. I think the experience is the good experience, or the intense experience, is a very fundamental part of a good project. So we need it.
So then was when you were then translating the experience into form?
It's a process which is kind of magic, let's say, because there is no formula. You cannot have a formula, otherwise it becomes automatic. So nobody wants something automatic in this profession, and it's something that more or less you know where you're going. You're going through understanding things, through getting something that you really like from the place, adapting to the project you're doing. And now, for example, we are very much producing collages, for example. Collage is a fantastic way of taking a situation, taking a city, or taking something, and transforming it into something else. And this is very useful for architects, because we are kind of transforming idea, transforming necessities into something else. So you need a way. But this way
finding your way.
Yes, but this way is never the same and is not easy to describe. You cannot give the formula. Come here, we explain your. More or less. So then the issue of collage, I would love if you give an example of like a recent project where this collage This
really,
collage were important.
Yeah.
We won a church competition in for Ferrara. And
Beautiful city.
a beautiful city. At the very beginning, we had no idea about how to make a church, and the city of Ferrara is so strong and has so many fantastic churches.
Yes.
So we started to make collage with the city of Ferrara, and then we started to see in the photographs some photographs where Ferrara was invaded by, how do you say, balloons? You know, this kind of
Like hot air balloons?
hot air balloons.
Yeah.
And then we started to make collage with Ferrara and hot air balloons. and little by little our church became something very light, you know. Also, it was a time where there were a lot of earthquakes. Ferrara was a city with no earthquakes, but it started last year.
Okay.
So we were producing a very, very light structure. And this was coming maybe from this association, you know, Ideas Association. Visual association.
Well, how do you then harness people's visions, the creativity?
You know, the structure, because we are a disaster in creating a structure. I use this discovery that I did and say, we are a family.
Hey.
So I'm the mother. That's very easy. And it's easy to me, no?
Yeah.
But then
There's plenty of examples of motherhood around that you can look at.
Yes, but then you have older sons and daughters, and then you have youngers, and sometimes the youngers are much more fresh and creative, and they love what they do. And the seniors are sometimes saying, hey, but this is not our way. Say, but let's introduce something new. And you have to be very diplomatic in this structure, because I think it's necessary to break it sometimes a little bit.
This exhibition in Venice is really about the elements of architecture, the fundamentals.
I have to say, yesterday was for the first time in the exhibition, one of the exhibition, not the one in the Giardini. It was nice, very clear, also a very big effort. Look at windows and history of the windows and technologies of the windows or the flooring or the ceilings. But at the end, I have to say, I appreciated, I was enjoying while I was doing the tour, but when I came out I say, okay, I would have never done an exhibition like this, I have to say.
And I mean, construction and putting materials together, you're a builder.
I love building, and that's why I love to do small things. For example, now we did a shop in 2 months without project, let's say. We were doing project, construction, everything in the same time.
Wow.
Or now with the...
You had no even the construction documents or...
We were producing construction document, and the next day we had the artisan next to us, and we were telling
Where was
her...
that?
When?
Where was that?
In Barcelona. It's a friend with little money who wanted to have a beautiful shop, and we were helping.
Wonderful. What would be the element of gender in architecture?
I don't know. I try very many times to understand what is making women, for example, a little different in architecture from men. It's not so easy, being a woman and being recognized as a woman. I think it's something that it still has to be worked a little bit, no? Because women, we had always a fantastic role. I was telling you before that I think we are the people really making a society cohesive, because we can adapt and bring things. But also we are in the history the people who were able to really create other people, no? Not only physically but also under the education or bringing about the organization of a family and all these organizational things. And now women were very good in organizations, for example, but it's not it's not strange. It's just normal, no? Because we're very able in this. But what is not easy is to have the recognition of the woman in society, because societies usually were more dedicated to men. And now we have to rediscover our role and to make it being recognized. And this is something that we still have a lot to work about that.
Any ideas for concrete steps? I mean, is it steps that we can take? I mean,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Going little by little,
Just doing-
explaining, for example, our specific capacities, or rediscovering them, or also understanding why sometimes we are the one who block ourselves, and we like to say, okay, we don't need more, you know, because also it's very difficult. You know, now I don't have my husband, and I'm a woman alone, and I'm the sole person in my office.
Yeah.
I think in the world of men, this is very attractive. You know, a man who is leading, and he's very attractive. But not in the world of women. You are not very attractive if you're a boss. At the reverse.
Yeah.
Men are kind of maybe regarding you with respect,
yeah.
but going away for a sentimental relationship. So it's difficult.
Yes.
That's why
Yes.
sometimes we don't want it.
Yes, and then also the organizational can sometimes be in support of design, but sometimes not as much involved in design, or we have to
Well,
overcome.
we have to overcome a lot of things, and in the same time we have to think that we have a lot to work. No, you cannot change history so quickly.
Yeah.
So we have to be very patient and very constant, and go on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you, Caroline.
wonderful.